Hello, everybody. Welcome, or sorry, you are welcome. Pardon the interruption. Sometimes my iPad gets full and then it just stops, so I gotta delete some things. So, continuing with our message, have you heard? Here's our next section of the message. Have you heard about the university that I went to? Let me tell you a little bit about it. The time of my life where I went to that school was about 40 years ago. So that's been a long time ago. In much more recent times, about 10 years ago or so, for a particular reason, I would visit that same town where the school is once a year and for a particular function. And while I was there, I would look up a good friend of mine that I went to school with all those many years ago. And at this point, he was a principal of a high school. And in the same town where he had gone to, he and I had both had gone to the school. We were very close friends. We had lived together, shared the same home along with other people. And so, as a principal, he is responsible for the teaching staff of the school. And I don't recall again, this was 10 or more years ago, so I don't recall the exact issue, but in his job, he was increasingly growing frustrated with the university that we used to go to. And in particular, the only reason I can think of now that he would be frustrated with it's because of graduates from that school coming and then working within the school system and then being part of the school that he's a principal over. And I do recall exactly, the way he phrased it. We would get together and maybe have lunch together or breakfast together. And so while we were doing that, he was talking, and the term that he used was a cut above. He found that the school culture emphasized, and this got into the students. It became part of their personalities to some degree. They lived in it for 4 or more years, and so it had an opportunity to become part of them. There was this idea or attitude of being a cut above. And that was the phrase that he used, a cut above. And he even told me about a story where, and again, I'm not entirely remembering all the circumstances around this or why he would be talking to this person, but he told me about how he was communicating with somebody at the university and about this issue. And this was a person who was fairly high up in the administration of the school. And how he was trying to make some progress on improving the situation. So he wanted to talk to this man. And so one day his secretary told him, or his administrative assistant told him that this man was on the line. He had left messages for him, hard to get a hold of, important person, and now he was calling him back and he was on the line. So I'm not saying that this is the exact right thing to do, but my friend said, okay. And so he just sat there and waited for a couple of minutes and did nothing, just to let the guy stew on the line for a while. And then he picked up the phone and talked to him. And so I don't think it went well, from what I remember. But anyway, this is his personal experience with his own school. The teachers coming out of that school, being trained in that school, were being less than what they could be because they thought they were more than what they were. They were a cut above. That was the attitude. So the next part of what I'm going to share here might make you a little sick. But when I say sick, I don't mean a disease sickness, but just bear with me and we'll get past it, and I think you'll know what I mean. So this particular school, compared to many others, had a smaller student population. They admitted fewer students, therefore it was harder to get into. It was more, you could say, elite, a little more exclusive. Some people that we know well in more recent years, when I say we, my wife and I, we know these people well. They live in that part of our country. And their son applied to the same school. He applied to the engineering program. And his high school average that he graduated with, or maybe his final year in school, his average was 88%. And that was not good enough. That 88% students just would not get admitted into engineering in that school, and so he needed to go to a different school. Now, when I went to that school, My high school average was 97 point something percent. It was, in fact, if I was to be real pointed about it, it was closer to 98%. And so they admitted me. And not only admitted me, but gave me a scholarship. So they paid me to come. Wow. So the engineers in that school, in the Faculty of Applied Science, they called it, they were a world apart from the other students. The school itself cultivated an image of being a cut above other schools. Now, within the school, the engineers were a cut above the other students, or maybe even more than a cut above. Most students were in the Faculty of Arts and Science, and the art students would have 15 hours of class a week. They would, and then of course there would be homework and reading and beyond that, but they had 15 hours of class time. The engineers had more like 35 hours of classes each week, and labs. And the subject matter was generally much more difficult, more difficult courses. One of the things we needed to do was, as engineers, we needed each year to, I forget it, but 1 or 2, we needed to take a couple of arts and science courses or arts courses. And so one I took was economics. And one of the things, and this was a difficult thing for some of us to get over, but we were used to, most of the students in engineering were used to being, you could say, perfectionists or doing very well in their schoolwork. But it was just too demanding, too much work, and it was too hard. There was, again, 35 hours a week, and then many hours beyond that of homework and assignments and different things. And so it was almost overbearing. And really what probably most or all students had to do, maybe there might have been a few exceptions, but most of us, what we needed to do was just purposefully not do well at some things, just not give it any attention, not give it any time, in order to focus, not trying to be bad, but in order to focus on other things, because we just did not have enough time. We were not capable of handling the workload as it was. And so in that scenario, I took an economics course. That was an arts course. And what I did is I attended the lectures, and throughout the whole term did just about nothing else. Attended the lecture, so I was hearing what the professor had to say. And then when the exam came, the night before, I did some reading, and the exam was going to be largely on the textbook, and the textbook was very thick, and I had no time, not near enough time the night before to read the whole textbook. So what I did was I read the first sentence of each paragraph and went quickly through what I thought were the most important parts of the book, just reading the first sentence of each paragraph. And then the next day needed to write the exam. Turned out got 80% on it while walking out. This is before we learned our results, but while walking out after having written the exam, I overheard some arts students, these 15-hour-a-week people, discussing how they had studied and studied and studied and studied, and how they found the exam so difficult, even so, and they were afraid that they hadn't even passed it. And I'm just overhearing this, as we're walking out of the exam room, and I couldn't relate to what the person was talking about. So I'm talking about the fact how we were different than, separate from, in a different category. And guess what I'm doing? I'm comparing myself to other people, and I'm taking my sense of who I am, my value, my significance, my importance is being derived from my comparison of myself with other people. Now, we engineers, just continuing with that, we had a separate bar, for example. There was one bar that was common for all people that attended the university if they wanted to go there, but we had our own, because again, we're separate from, different than. We would more, there would be we're engineers, we're different. We no brightly colored cocktail drinks served at that bar. More, the music wasn't just, pop music of the day. It would be a lot more classic rock and roll, if you know what I mean. So the engineers, we partied harder, worked harder. We had these yellow jackets that these yellow leather jackets that identified that we were part of the Faculty of Applied Science. And there was different faculties, and every faculty had their jacket that students could buy. Different colors would signify different faculties. Ours were yellow. I'm not sure how many people in real life want to wear a yellow leather jacket. We didn't call it yellow, we called it gold. But that was the color for engineering. They were, and I realize in today's dollars this is not a lot of money, but they were about $100 each, and a lot of students, and this is 40 years ago, so $100 was worth a lot more back then, and a lot of students didn't have much money, so most students did not buy a jacket. That was, you could just look around campus, and most students are not wearing a jacket, but some are. But in engineering, though, nearly everybody did. And it's not that we were told to or had to, it's just somehow we knew. And these yellow jackets made us distinguishable from a distance. It's part of what separated us, made us different then. So here's the main point of what I'm saying. It's not how, now follow me closely here, and we're having some fun. Here's the main point. It's not how good we were. That's not what I'm emphasizing right now. But the point I'm emphasizing is in spite of how good we were, it is how we were not snobs. Isn't that amazing that we were not snobs? We were not sitting in some country manor, wearing a dinner jacket, enjoying some expensive and appropriate after-dinner drink that the servants have brought to us, using a cigarette holder, holding our noses in the air, discussing our membership in the most elite and pompous clubs. You see, that's not us, not even remotely close. We were more staying up late the night before for whatever reason, maybe working hard, maybe not working, but staying up late and then getting not enough sleep and rolling out of bed and grabbing something to eat as we're going out the door and showing up in class unshaven, uncombed, maybe even. Wearing construction boots, unlaced, and jeans, and our leather jackets, and we're just as down to earth as it gets. If you were to try to talk to us about, do you think you're pompous? Do you think you're snobbish? Do you think you're high-minded? We would know for a fact that we weren't. Because we're not just not snobbish, we're at the other end of the spectrum. We're as far away from that as you can get. So I think you get where I'm going with this. It's an issue that we need to give a little bit of thought to, maybe pray about, and to talk to the Lord about. Is there anything we need to be aware of? It is certainly nothing wrong with excelling, nothing wrong with improving, nothing wrong with growing spiritually. In fact, it's what we need to do. It's what we want to do. We have to camp out, it might be, and do this as you think appropriate, but maybe we need to just observe at times or be alert to what is coming out of us, just to make sure that our motive isn't to be better than somebody else, or even just to observe that we are better than somebody else, but our purpose is to be better than what we were, and that means loving and caring for other people. Let's just read the scripture again. I'm gonna retrieve it from the Amplified Version. We'll finish with this. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, snobbish, high-minded, exclusive, but readily adjust yourself to people, things, and give yourselves to humble tasks. Never overestimate yourself or be wise in your own conceits. I trust that is a message that is edifying for you, and we again want to thank you for joining us and being part of what the Lord is doing in our lives, and giving eternal life to those who by patient continuance in doing good seek for glory, honor, and immortality. Have a great week.